It's coffee time. Man, looking at my hair right now makes me actually realize how many different shades are in it at this point. Like down here is still like this pinky color, and all up in here is back to that kind of reddish browny color that's really light, and then my roots from the bleed out are all purple. It's so funny. I don't think that it looks bad, it's just kind of like, oh, what happened to my hair? It did not bleed out evenly at all. But I'm alright with it. It's whatever. It's whatever. So I went to 2 places today that I have stories for. One place is just more of like a description. But, so we went to a restaurant today. And, like, I'm busy, like, talking and eating our food and whatever else. And I realized, I was taking a sip of coffee and both of my utensils were right next to each other. And I realized that they were, like, right up against each other. And I was like, that's weird. I don't remember leaving them like that. And then I went to grab one of them and realized that they were magnetized together. So then I looked like a totally insane person looking around and going, and like pulling them apart and then putting them back together and looking around like, this is the most incredible thing ever. But of course it just looked like I was doing this and going, wow! But what was cool is that, I don't know if it was the manager or like the dude that owned the place, but we started playing with our utensils because we realized they were all magnetizing to each other. Is that the right way to say that? Anyway, so there was a dude who was watching us and started laughing, and he was like, ah, you have the magic utensils, and we were like, But he came over and explained to us why that happens, because typically restaurants have an issue where accidentally they will throw out silverware. And at this place that we were at, they were like, well, our silverware is really nice. You know, we definitely don't want to accidentally throw away forks and things like that just get wrapped up in napkins or whatever else when we're, checking out food. So what they do is they have this huge magnet on the trash bin that when you open it up, there's this big magnet right here on the inside of the top. So that when you're tossing stuff out, if it's made of metal, it'll attach to the magnet rather than falling into the trash bin, which is brilliant. But if you leave the utensils there for too long, then they become magnetized. So he was saying that they didn't realize this until after they had had it for a while, and they were like, wow, this is working so well. But then they were noticing that their utensils were all sticking together. And I thought that that was so funny. I was like, well, it's fun for me. I mean, I got to be like, whoa! And he laughed. And I thought that it was just really cool that I got an explanation. It wasn't just, why are these attaching to each other? Magnets, how do they work? Like, there was no explanation for me at first. And then him coming over and being like, I can tell you exactly why that happens because I am in the know. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So now we know. And now I know if I ever were to open up a restaurant of my own, now that I know a really cool way to make sure that I never accidentally throw out utensils or other metallica things. It was funny though because I think that I'm becoming desensitized to terrible coffee. Like, I just love all coffee. I can drink a cup of coffee and say, wow, this is really good. Like, I can tell when coffee is good, but I can drink pretty terrible coffee and be like, it's coffee. So we were all like drinking this coffee, and it was posed that perhaps the coffee was burnt and terrible. And I was like, I think everybody's starting to understand that they shouldn't take my word at all for if coffee is not that bad, quote, end quote, if you will. I was like, well, I mean, it's still good. Like, I'm drinking it black. It's still fine to me. And then I got deadpanned at, but it wasn't that bad, but apparently it was burned. I don't know. So now before, when I was telling you guys about how I wasn't sure if I had ever had burned coffee, apparently I have. I just can't tell if it's burned. This is a bad sign for me as a coffee lover. I don't know. All coffee is... It just tastes like a different kind of coffee to me. Anywho, so after the restaurant, Then we went to, oh, which modern art museum was it? LA. Oh man, we went to a modern art place. Los Angeles. Wait, let me look up Los Angeles. Modern Art Museum. County Museum of Modern Art, is that it? Let's click at images. Images. Museum of Contemporary Art, was that it? Yes, that's where we went. Went to the Museum of Contemporary Art. And it was pretty awesome. It was smaller than I thought that it was going to be. Definitely smaller than the Portland Art Museum, which surprised me. But LA has so many different, like, there's like the Getty and all that. I've never been to the Getty. I hear that it's great though, so I'd love to go sometime. But this one was pretty cool because they had an installation there that was about the destruction of art, basically. And so a lot of the pieces were really interesting. It was all wartime pieces that were trying to make a statement about the destruction of knowledge, destruction of art, destruction of just culture in general. So some of the pieces were really interesting. I can't remember. There was a woman who did really cool pieces that were all welding and burlap that look like they're coming out at you. There's a lot of movement to them, and they're just so gorgeous. I was like, these are the coolest. I loved them so much. But like, there's like a big hole in the center of all of them. So it's like this burlap that along the canvas is going like this, and then it just comes out at you. And it's in all these different shapes that look very interlocking, but it looks very organic at the same time. God, I don't know how to explain it, but they're just so cool. I wish I remembered her name, but she did a bunch of them. One of them looked like two robots fused together. I almost said robats, and I was like, that's not a word. That sounds like a possible nickname for my roommate. But yeah, and then I got to see a bunch of art by people that I just love. Like, they had a big Jackson Pollock piece there. Oh, I love Jackson Pollock. Jackson Pollock is one of my favorite artists ever. And they had a ton of Rothko, which I also love Rothko. Rothko was one of those artists that when we studied him in art history, feel free to pause this video and Google these artists as I talk about them, if you would like to see what their art looks like. But Jackson Pollock does splatter painting that no matter who has attempted to replicate his paint style, that no one has ever been able to. You can always tell if you have like the trained eye, and actually they've started like figuring out how to tell with computers. You can always tell a Pollock because nobody can replicate like the way that he does it. But they're just gorgeous paintings. And then Rothko, in my art history class, we had like this huge discussion where everybody was arguing whether or not Rothko was a talented artist because his stuff is very basic. It's all rectangle on rectangle, like just huge chunks of color. But it's one of those situations where when you're in a classroom and you're looking at a slide, you can't really grasp what it's like to be standing next to one of these pieces. They're huge. They're so big. And I think the impact of them doesn't really hit you unless you're there. Because whenever I see a Rothko piece in person, they all have a lot of very strong emotion to them, even though they're just very basic. I love them. I love Rothko. So they had like an entire room that was just all Rothko stuff. And they had an entire Rauschenberg area too. He loves birds, and he is all about birds. I had forgotten that. Bob Rauschenberg does like collage sculpture and collage paintings that are very dark and interesting, and he puts birds on everything. It's like Portland. Put a bird on it. Oh, it's art. It was just so funny. I was like, oh, chickens and geese and what is who else did we see? They didn't have a lot of sculpture work there, which was really sad for me. I love at the Portland Art Museum, there's like an entire outside area that is just all huge sculpture pieces. And it's awesome. It's so cool. If you ever get to go to the Portland Art Museum, you should totally do it because it's so great. I think that, like, considering that, you know, we're no LA, we have a really good art museum. They have a really good section of just modern art that I love. They didn't have nearly enough Liechtenstein. They only had 3 Liechtenstein pieces, and none of them were very exciting to me. I was like, ah, I do love Liechtenstein, though. These pieces are just so, they're just so funny to me. Brad! Anywho. So that was my day. I did the art thing. I did the magnetized utensils thing. I think that I'm going to drink the rest of my coffee. And then maybe just chill and hang out with my cat and watch some TV. I'm A-okay with that plan. I think that that's a really good plan for my day. But yeah, I hope that you guys had a good day, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye. Mwah.